Happy New Year! This is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the historic riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. Parliament is not back yet, but I want to update you on what might be one of the most important issues that will be debated this year. That's the Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment. There's still a lot of confusion out there about what this new tax on you will do, how it will work, what it will cost, when and how often it will go up, and most importantly, what you can do to help axe this tax. There's also a lot to cover, so let's dive right in. First, what exactly is the Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment? The Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment is a federal tax, an output-based pricing system that will be applied for large corporate carbon emitters in emissions-intensive, trade-exposed industries. Now, the reason they're using language like that is to disguise what they're really doing and why they're doing it. What they are doing is not taxing large corporate emitters. Why they're not taxing them is because carbon taxes that do nothing for the environment will hurt our economy and make us less competitive. The second part of the Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment is the part you will be paying. This will be a charge on fuels like gasoline, diesel fuel, home heating oil, natural gas, and is going to be started to charge on April 1st of this year. April Fools indeed. This year, the Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment will be on gasoline at 4.42 cents a liter, or roughly $2.50 every time you fill up your tank. Next year, it'll be almost 7 cents a liter on about $4 each time you fill up a 60-liter tank. In 2021, the Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment goes up again to almost 9 cents a liter, or about $5 per fill-up. And by 2022, the carbon tax that does nothing for the environment will reach 11 cents a liter, or about $7 every time you go to the gas station. If you fill your tank once a week, you'll be paying about $345 in Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment, just for the gasoline. That's just for gasoline. Everything you buy, from food to clothes, will be more expensive because of the Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment. But this isn't just about numbers or some spreadsheet. This has an impact on people's lives and their livelihoods. I recently met up with local business owner Tim Shizen to talk about how the Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment will impact his family business. Let's watch.
3-point contact. There you go. Right here. Another bar where you can safely grab. Another step there. Everything is a handful.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at the unloader.
Yes.
Okay. So what do we need in order to be safe here?
In order to be safe, we should be wearing high visibility clothes.
High visibility. Oh, it's even yellow, or is this green?
It is yellow.
Oh, are they going to call us those yellow jacket people?
I would hope so.
Okay. They're going to call stuff anyhow, no matter what.
No matter what we do,
Okay, so this will keep us safe?
just to keep us safe. Keep a good distance from the loader. Around to the front of the truck. Welcome to the winter. And the thing is, with the winter driving, our winter fuel is a lot less power. There's a lot less power in the winter fuel versus summer fuel in Canada.
Yeah.
So in the winter time, regardless of the snow and slush, because diesel will gel, it's a lot thinner in the winter. So we use a lot more. So in the summertime, I can usually get around 1.8 liters or 1.8 kilometers per liter.
Right.
And now I'm about 1 to 1.
Okay.
A liter per kilometer, as you've seen coming
Yeah.
up, like on the best of times, 1.8.
Yeah, it was 0.8.
0.8 miles per gallon in places.
Miles per gallon?
Miles per gallon. So it makes a big difference on the end of the day, 10 cents.
How come it's in miles per gallon and not per kilometer?
Well, these trucks used to be built in Canada, Kelowna, BC.
Right.
Western Star was born and bred in British Columbia in the Rocky Mountains, and due to things going on over the days, it's built in Oregon now.
Okay.
So we'll just get this going here. 5, 2, 7, 2, 2, 1.
So will it go to 0?
I'll 0 it there. So it's what? Just about 4, 4:15, and I started at 3:30 this morning. So go that way, Bernard.
Watch it, Bernard. Okay, so how much a liter does it cost you, or a gallon? How do you buy it?
I buy it by the liter.
By the liter. So
Yep.
how much for this vehicle, for winter fuel, is it costing you?
By the liter right now, I think it's $1.32 a liter.
$1.32 a liter. And how many liters a day do you use?
I'm not quite sure what I'll use today. I have a couple of different routes, but anywhere between 400 and 550 liters.
400 and 550 liters. So if on a liter of fuel they're charging 10 cents carbon tax, so you could be paying upwards of what, $50 a day?
Yes, for sure. On 500
carbon
liters.
tax.
Yes, $50 a day.
So we were unloading before,
Yep.
and then of course somebody loaded you. So
Yes.
between your loader, your vehicle that brought it here, and then the unloader, how many liters all combined would you guys be using?
So, from start to finish, and by no means is this finished, we're only partway through the lumber process.
Right.
So, up until this point, so we have a processor in the bush that uses approximately 300 to 400 liters a day. So it cuts the tree down. We have a skidder that gets it from the point of dropping to the landing. That runs around 200 liters per day. And the loader, which I load with, runs about 150 to 200 liters a day. So you start adding up the math there. We haven't even made it aboard yet. We got it here. My day is around 500 liters, 550. The unloader fella too, he's over 200 for one unit. And then it's got to be handled again to get to the mill from that point. So these loaders that are running around up here around the mill are burning fuel as well. And then the truck that comes and picks up this lumber and takes it to the planer burns the fuel. It's
okay. So well over 1,000 liters a day for your production there.
That's right.
And now your diesel engine in Canada, this truck is fairly new, right?
Yes, this is a 2015. It's up to the 2016 emission standards. So right now it's close to what they would say probably next to zero emissions. If you can see the inside of my pipes up there,
pretty clean.
There's no black soot, no black smoke. If you see something smoking out of these trucks, there's something broke.
So why is it that you've got zero emissions in your truck? Well, when I'm behind a bus or something on the highway, and there's this big black stuff coming out of the pipe.
Well, there prior to 2013, I believe, is when most of the vehicles all went to a higher emissions rating.
Right.
Where they start to use diesel exhaust fluid. So in that one
Diesel exhaust fluid?
diesel exhaust fluid.
What's that do?
Well, in other words, it aids in the burn of the soot and the particulates that come out of a diesel engine by nature.
So, is that free? Is that built in your?
Absolutely not. In a truck this size, I have a 16-liter, 600-horse engine. I burn approximately 10 liters of DEF for every 300 liters of fuel burn. So that's how we...
So 1 liter of
Per-
the DEF for
Yes.
every 30 liters of fuel burn.
That's right.
And how much does it cost?
Roughly $1 a liter.
So you,
The higher the bulk pack, the cheaper you can get it. But if you just get it off the shelf, it really offsets it. So we'll average it at $1 and call it fair. I've seen it as high as $1.25 a liter, you know, on the shelf, and as low as like 90 cents a liter at some of the big pumps.
so then to have 0 emissions,
Yep,
you're paying this extra 3 cents a liter for fuel.
that's right.
But on top of that, they're charging you a 10-cent carbon tax a liter.
Exactly.
There, and you're not emitting anything.
We're not really emitting a thing. No.
And you're in the forestry, and trees sequester carbon dioxide, and younger trees absorb more.
That's right.
So you take them down in a certain way, you've got your forest absorbing even more than it would if it were just left unforested.
A properly managed forest is always greener, so to speak, because just the way the growth has taken place, like I've said before, it's almost like weeding a garden. You don't get healthy trees with a lot of dead residues and stuff around. It really helps the forest by logging.
Okay, so this is a fairly new truck.
Yep.
How long is it in between when people generally buy new trucks? Is it 10 years? What's the normal lifespan?
In over-the-road trucks, you're looking at a 3 to 5 year turnover.
Really?
And I'm just outside of the 5-year range before you start really seeing things break down and stuff. The really good life of a truck is younger than 5 years old.
Okay, so if we're talking engine costs, because they're making engines differently right now.
That's right.
So the engine you would have had before this one, your new one, roughly what would it have been worth?
The engine in my previous one was an 06, so it was still a fairly clean truck. They had catalytic converters at that time, basically in the pipes. It was still fairly clean, but nothing what it is today. It was roughly around $24,000 to replace the engine in that. It was a C15 Caterpillar. Today, with the DD16s, I believe they're upwards of $60,000 to replace
Is that just inflation, or?
It's because of the engineering that has to go into the development of these clean engines. So every 5 years, we're paying for the engineers to reduce the emissions as it is.
So your engine is double the cost
It
every
is.
5 years.
It is quite a bit. One thing on the far side, and I didn't mention it earlier, and I have had to replace it already, was it's called the one box, and that's where all this magic takes place, that we get the clean exhaust that we have. It was $12,500 on a 4-year-old truck to replace the muffler on this. $12,500. There's 2 filters in there that cost $1,000 a piece. They had to be changed on top of that. So with labor and stuff, $15,000 to change the muffler on it so it doesn't smoke. So we're paying a lot of money to keep everything clean. And if this thing starts smoking, the lights will come on in the truck. It will shut us down, and we cannot run these trucks. It will ground us. So we can't pollute anymore with these trucks as it is.
So, and on top of all that, he wants to ding you 10 cents a liter for fuel.
On top of that, 10 cents a liter for fuel. So,
Well, somebody's got the Midas touch.
yeah. Yes, exactly. You know, and it's always passed down to the consumer. For a while, you know, we can absorb a little bit for a little time, but not for long, and it eventually goes down. So when you take a young couple and you look at the lumber around here, this eventually is probably going to go into a house. Well, it's going to cost those people more too. So you're really hurting our next generation all the time.
But you know, our next generation is, they say they're not going to be able to afford houses. And in fact, they're building these multi-unit residences so that, you know, because they can't afford them, they know they got to live in an apartment.
That's right. That's right. So it's really destroying the way of life when you make things more expensive.
So with all these increased costs, your truck, your muffler change, the fuel, the diesel, emissions fluid, is your charge, what you charge for trucking, is it going up commensurate with the increases in your expenses?
We would like to, but we can't, because at the end of the day, the lumber itself, with the markets that are out there that are soft, we can't increase the price of the lumber to the point of exhaustion here where we can't sell it. So we all take a hit right from the top down. So what it really means is we can increase the lumber a bit onto the customer, but we all end up taking a big hit because we'll lose our job if we really increased it to the point where we could recoup what we had 20 years ago. Like Rick said before, the rates haven't went up in 20 years because we've all tried to suck it up to get through to better days. This forest industry has been hurting a long time. We do not need another tax on what we're doing. We're just coming through, and a lot of us had seen bad times in 2008.
Right.
And thank goodness that there was somebody smart at the helm to keep it from being as devastating as it could have been, or could have went to. We're still trying to recoup from that. Still, it's a big part of what had
over
taken
10 years.
That's right. It takes a long time to recoup from that. We do not want to see it ever go down to that extreme again, because I'm afraid the guys that are still around won't be able to make it through this time.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay, did you get your number over there,
Yeah,
Bernard?
let's see how much.
That's what I put in today since 3:30 this morning.
$500.
500 liters.
I can see why you're upset.
That's why we get upset.
All right, well, thanks. And that's Tim Shizen, Shizen Trucking over here.
Tim is not alone. Trudeau knows that when the bills for his tax come due, it will be hugely unpopular. That's why he's offering an election year bribe. Trudeau says he'll use some of the tax money he collects to send out checks to Ontario residents. Except that was just more Liberal media spin. Don't check your mailbox anytime soon. Trudeau is not sending out checks to anyone at this time. You have to apply for the Trudeau Carbon Bribe on your tax return, as if returns aren't long enough and complicated enough as it is. If you're married or common law and you check the box requesting the Trudeau Carbon Bribe, your spouse will only receive half of the amount you get, even if you both commute the same distance to work. Trudeau is very privileged to be able to have his wife stay at home with his 2 taxpayer-funded nannies. But for most families, both parents have to work. Once you've listed all of your family members, you have to check a box stating whether or not you live in a census metropolitan area or not. If you do not live in a census metropolitan area, your Trudeau Carbon Bribe will be 10% more than for people living in a census metropolitan area. This begs several questions, including what is a census metropolitan area? How do I find out if I live in a census metropolitan area? A census metropolitan area is a way for Statistics Canada to classify places where people live. For example, if you live in Sudbury, you live in a census metropolitan area. But if you are in Sault Ste. Marie, you live outside the census metropolitan area and will receive an extra 10% in the Trudeau Carbon Bribe. Brockville, you get the extra 10%. Belleville, you're out of luck. One family on the outskirts of Arnprior will receive the extra 10%, but another family across the street will not. Does any of this sound fair to you? By making people apply for the Trudeau Carbon Bribe, the Liberals are ensuring that those who can least afford to pay the Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment are also the ones least likely to file a claim. The Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment is unfair, and the Trudeau Carbon Bribe is a mess. So what can we do? Well, the only way to stop the Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment is to remove Trudeau from office during the next election. So many Canadians have written in asking, well, why don't you move a motion of non-confidence and force an early election? Unfortunately, Trudeau has a majority government and has won all 296 confidence votes since forming government in 2015. The only way to defeat him is at the ballot box. That chance is only 9 months from now. In the past, I've asked for your help with letter campaigns to the Prime Minister and his ministers, and we've had successes. But that approach won't work this time. For Trudeau and his Liberals, taxing carbon for something that has nothing to do with the environment has become an article of faith. This time, I need you to write to your friends and your family. Send them a letter or an email or post them on Facebook. Let them know that the Trudeau Carbon Tax that does nothing for the environment will impact you. Let them know why it's critical they go out and vote against this tax grab. You are the best person possible that your friends and family can be urged from and told about the need to replace Trudeau. Remember, if you have any questions about the Trudeau Carbon Tax, your federal tax returns, or any federal government issues, please do not hesitate to leave them in the comments below or contact my office. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant wishing you a very good night.